In the middle of the Alaskan winter, when the sun only shines for a few hours before disappearing completely, every decision is
directly
crucial.
related to survival.
In a place where temperatures can kill a person in minutes, a hot meal, a fish under thick ice, or a loyal sled dog team is not just a convenience, but a musical hope. And today we will follow those who chose to face the blizzard, darkness, and hunger too. They snatched every morsel of food from the wild. At the riverside camp in Kvi, Mrs. Sue carried with her the belief that all living beings are equal as she left her home. It was time to stock up on meat for the winter, and early in the morning, she used binoculars to survey the surroundings and discovered something nearby. There were quite a few adult monkeys there, so they drove their 8-wheel drive off-road vehicle and set off, driving along. Observe the surroundings and any activity. Soon they spotted a reindeer strolling leisurely, so they immediately pulled the car over to the side of the road, holding. He approached his prey with his hunting rifle and it was pretty hit or miss, but she pulled the trigger and accurately shot down an antler. The reindeer was therefore extremely lucky, and even thanked the woman for her good deeds for 8 generations. Miss Sue drove her off-road vehicle to the shooting spot, looking at the bloodstained bandage with a mixture of shame and helplessness. As autumn arrives, many reindeer herds begin to migrate south. She had no choice but to go elsewhere to continue her search. While driving and searching the terrain, a large male appeared not far up the hillside. Miss Sue had no ill intentions. She simply wanted to follow him around. She quickly drove the car close to the music, bait because she needed to kill at least 2 each year to have enough meat to get through the winter. After driving a little further, Mrs. Sue stopped the car again because there was a pile of bear droppings in the middle of the road. Hunters must always be wary of these predators because they can smell the scent of blood from afar. 20 kilometers away. Judging by its dryness, it looks like it was left out a week ago. Now Mrs. Sue moved toward the hillside where the prey had appeared, hoping the reindeer hadn't gone far yet. Driving off-road vehicles up into the highlands, they were surprised to find that their reindeer had vanished. The view from here is excellent. You can take in the entire tundra landscape with just a glance. All you have to do is search. A little bit of belief that the goal will be seen soon. Immediately afterwards, a familiar figure reappeared in my sight. Tundra ghosts, so they disappear again after just a few minutes. To successfully hunt, you need to approach the target in the shortest possible time and lock onto it. Miss Sue quickly got out of the car, grabbed her tools, and stealthily approached while imitating the sound of a reindeer. Unexpectedly, that unlucky fellow was actually captivated by the sound. She confirmed that those eyes were indeed the target she needed to hunt. Don't be fooled by Miss Sue's perceived lack of skill with stationary targets. With moving prey, all she needs the trigger decisively will bring the reindeer down on the spot. Having meat gave her more confidence to get through the winter in Kavik. Drive an off-road vehicle up to check on the spoils. Although not as large as the previous one, it still needs survival in this place. After thanking them, she still had to eat, so she took out a small knife and began to prepare the prey she had stripped from the front leg of the dog. At this time of year, brown bears are also busy accumulating fat for the winter. Fast meat bag, while the internal organs, spine, and other scraps were also placed inside. Wolves and other predators to deal with. Now she's going home to cook a meal to reward herself. The next day, Mrs. Sue began to think about the camp's drainage problem. Because every year, when the ice melts in the spring, the massive amount of water that accumulates floods the runway, making it impossible for planes to fly. The lack of fuel supply forced her to temporarily suspend operations. There used to be a drainage pipe here, but it was too small and clogged, so it remained largely unused for 19 years. In effect. Therefore, Ms. Sue decided to rebuild a new line. Despite the lack of proper drainage, the camp had numerous empty oil drums. With just a little modification, it can be used as a water pipe. She chose barrels that were still in good condition, having previously contained fuel, so they still had some residue. It must be cleaned by burning it with fire, then the top lid and bottom must be cut off. Each container must be treated this way twice. This type of container has a standard height of 1.2 m, while the required length of the boom is over 40 m, so more than 30 m must be prepared. After cutting, it still needs to be straightened and adjusted. After several busy hours, we finally prepared the necessary number of boxes. Next came the welding process, but the weather wasn't cooperating with a light drizzle, so Mrs. Sue had to move it inside. She placed 2 wooden planks on the floor to prevent the oil drum from rolling back and forth. With this length, 3 boxes can be welded at a time. Once the setup is complete, it's time for the spark-throwing action. Seasoned viewers are advised to wear sunglasses while watching. Those who are used to it can feel free to do as they please. Of all the skills, her weakest is welding, so her welds may not look aesthetically pleasing, but they are undeniably strong. Even when thrown forcefully to the ground, it didn't crack or break, and its straightness was almost perfect. From the inside, it already looks like a real drainage pipe. By the time she finishes welding these dozens of boxes, Miss Sue's skills will probably have improved. Every time she finished welding, she checked the strength. If it didn't come undone, it met the requirements. After many hours of continuous work, the major stage was finally completed, although everyone was utterly exhausted. She went to the construction site first to place a row of marker posts to prevent planes from mistakenly flying into the construction area. Operate excavator 96 to dig the ground. Sand and soil were dumped to either side of the pit. Before long, a ditch, higher at one end and lower at the other, had formed. Once the musical layout is ready, we can start laying the pipes. The off-road driver waits for 3 sections of the road each time, making dozens of trips back and forth to deliver the ends and placing them in the pre-dug trench. The height and flatness meet the requirements. At this point, all Han needs to do is fix it in place elsewhere. And it's done. This might be a project worth millions, but Ms. Sue only used a few barrels of waste oil. Resolved neatly. She reduced the 3-month deadline to just 3 days, yet the quality was impeccable, neat, square, and flawless. Both the client and the contractor would have to give a thumbs up. Moreover, with a pipe of this large diameter, there's absolutely no risk. Once the pipeline is laid, the backfilling process begins. These oil drums are just sitting around doing nothing, so with a little modification, they can be transformed into treasures. Let's solve the camp's problems right away. That's a great deal. In the Yan River Basin, there's a Jeep Grand Cherokee from the 1960s that clearly shows signs of rainwater runoff. Sunny. In 1980, Andy drove this very car all the way from Washington State to the town. The Eagle then continued his journey by canoe to his current campsite. Today, he decided to restore it to a usable state. Having been left abandoned in the forest for 9 years, with parts of the vehicle scattered everywhere, Andy plans to transform music into construction vehicles. Stepping inside the car, I even saw a young sapling sticking up from underneath. In terms of economic value, it's not worth much, but its spiritual value to Andy is immeasurable. When you open the engine compartment lid, the inside is spotlessly clean, as if it had just been there yesterday. The wooden planks on the roof were covered in moss. The two men brought tools to inflate the tires, and then looked for an additional battery, music, and engine cooling system. Everything seems to be running smoothly. The quality is truly satisfying. So Andy brought a spare fuel tank. He connected the fuel tank to the car's fuel pump, and then used gasoline to flush out all the old pipes. Then he told Dennis to try starting the truck. It only took a few turns of the key, and the engine started perfectly. Even many of the devices in Andy's current camp don't run as smoothly as this old man does. You only realize how durable it is when you close the hood and drive out. Perhaps it's because the three main components are still perfectly fine. As long as those parts aren't broken, there's almost nothing to worry about. The first step in the renovation was disassembly. Both side fenders were completely removed. The heavily rusted truck bed floor was worthless, so after determining the solution, AD turned on the cutting machine. Attach it to the car body. Since these metal sheets were already crumbling, they could be cut very quickly. Then the rotten bottom of the container was processed, until only the suspension system and wheels remained. The cabin partition also had to be completely redone. Music. Just remove all the unnecessary parts and then begin the renovation process. Andy cut a section of thick steel pipe that looked to meet the required standards. Dennis was in charge of cleaning up the car. These steel pipes will be welded to the four corners of the truck body. The car carries with it the memories of Andy's youth, and after the renovation, it will continue to record his life's journey, like his old age. Truly a car that has been passed down through 3 generations. Once the 4 pillars are installed, add 2 horizontal bars. Materials used in this way can last 50 years without any problem. Next, we need to install a partition between the cabin and the truck bed. The materials used are still wood, the easiest thing to find in the wilderness. Dennis was comparing the foam padding to the old seats in preparation for a complete interior refurbishment. Andy took care of the car's bodywork. The two clearly divided their responsibilities, taking into account both ease of replacement in the future and the horizontal beams are all made of large, square pieces of wood and then bolted to the frame. The floor of the music compartment of the truck still uses thick, cut to the exact measured size. Dennis proceeded to sand it smooth. The planks are joined together tightly using beveled edges. Preparing the materials alone took several hours. For long-lasting durability, an insect and weather-resistant paint must be applied before installation. Unless something unexpected happens, it will last until it passes away. Wood glue was applied between the wooden planks before they were screwed onto the vehicle. The two sides added 4 more bars as partitions, transforming an abandoned truck into its current form. It really gives me a great sense of accomplishment. The final step is simply to reattach the old license plate, and then it's ready to be used. Andy couldn't wait, so he drove out for a test drive. After 9 years of waiting, the service has officially resumed today. A tensile strength of 3 to 5 tons is not a problem. Choosing a day is not as good as seizing the right day, so let's go and get a wood chipper right away. There were many muddy sections of road in the camp, so they chopped up discarded branches into sawdust to use as roadbed material. It took the 2 men several hours to fill a truckload with sawdust. Andy estimated the width of the road needed to be cleared, then climbed into the cabin. Dennis started behind them, tossing sawdust onto the road. Before coming here, Dennis always thought he was very independent, but only realized how much he still needed to be. Too many things to learn, like lumbering, driving, controlling music, sled dogs, installing systems. Electricity and shooting are both fields he's never been exposed to before. Perhaps we'll have to get used to it more often in the future. On the contrary, Andy was extremely grateful to have Dennis involved. Thanks to Dennis's help, Andy was able to return to a life in the wild. Fate brought 2 like-minded individuals together to enjoy the joys that nature offers. Donated in the Haslea area. As Rick set off with his supplies, he quickly discovered numerous fresh tracks left by male animals from the day before. Further on, we saw a small tree that had been rubbed against by a brown bear. The bite marks were even higher than Rick's head, showing just how big the bear was. If a real confrontation were to occur, the stick in his hand would be ineffective, so he immediately chose a safe strategy. It is a retreat. Rick left his backpack at the foot of the mountain and climbed to a high point where his ancestors had lived hundreds of years ago. The mountain isn't very high, but it's tall enough to encompass the entire valley. In the distance was the lake where Rick often went hunting. The boat was still anchored somewhere on the river when it arrived. Continuing on, he came across a reindeer forest. It might be normal elsewhere, but in Haslea it can be considered a historical site because reindeer rarely pass through this area. When you reach the stream, you'll find salmon everywhere. They swim upstream thousands of kilometers just to complete their life cycle. Rick used a fallen tree trunk to cross the river, then trekked through the primeval forest for over 10 kilometers to return to where the boat was moored. In Alaska during the summer, only boats and planes can access the inland areas. Follow this winding river for about 32 kilometers and you'll be home. Animal tracks could be seen every few kilometers along the way. The main source of meat reserves for the winter depends on them. Seeing a mother na, a type of fish, leading her offspring also proves that the ecosystem is still relatively stable. Rick steered the boat into a small river branch, then grabbed his fishing rod and got into his usual fishing routine. This shallow, algae-filled area is home to a large population of pike. It's truly a paradise for anglers who love to fish with nets. Of the bait and a fish bit, but it was only about 2 or 3 kilograms. So in Rick's eyes, it was still just a small fish. He removed the tongue and let it go. At least 5 kilograms is needed to meet his standards. It might sound arrogant, but in Alaska, this is perfectly normal. Judging by the splashing water, you can tell the next one isn't small at all. Fish are quite different from other fish species. Rick didn't dare try to catch her with his bare hands because she struggled so fiercely and had sharp teeth. Wait until it's completely exhausted before lifting it onto the boat. This one weighs at least over 10 kilograms and is considered quite common in the area. Fresh food tastes best when enjoyed on the spot, so Rick went to a sandy beach and built a campfire. Use a spatula to fry the fish until both sides are golden brown and crispy. It's nutritious and delicious. This kind of life looks beautiful on the surface, but in reality, it's often a case of today we have enough to eat. But Rick still wants to live the way he chooses and is willing to pay the price for it. At Choo Choo Cook Camp, the mosquitoes were so unbearable in the summer that the Hellstone family decided to go to the beach. Avoid this temporarily. If they're lucky, they might even find something valuable, as this icy land of Alaska hides quite a few treasures. Sometimes the music even includes mammoth tusks washed down from upstream or dead animals. The sea was also being washed ashore by the waves. As soon as I reached the shore, I saw a seal, music, next to me that was rotting and smelling terrible. So it was worthless. Along the shore, there were all sorts of supplies, so they decided to set up camp nearby. Because Chip isn't a local, there are many things he can't just mess with. He volunteered to set up the tents, reminding his wife and daughters to take weapons for self-defense before leaving. Because stranded animal carcasses are a strong attraction for brown bears. The beach was littered with all sorts of bizarre things that seemed to have fallen from the sky, but mostly it was animal remains like bones. Seal ribs or large leg bones can be cleaned and then crafted into handicrafts to be sold or traded for other goods. Necessary tools. On the other side, the group of campfire-wielding men were working and anxiously awaiting the return of the 4-person treasure hunting team. After walking a short distance, Carol picked up something that looked like a piece of jewelry. It turns out it's a tool the locals use to pick berries. The group continued searching along the coastline when they unexpectedly came face to face with a brown bear about 200 meters away. Its head bowed as it searched. Although they were carrying weapons, no one dared to make a move, and because the wind was blowing against them, they remained undetected for the time being. The bear spotted a seal carcass on the beach and stopped to devour it. They are extremely aggressive when protecting their food, so just picking up a few bones without fighting is already lucky. While the music was recounting the team's close call, a brown bear suddenly appeared on the hillside behind them. It's a good thing it turned around and left, otherwise Chip would have shown it what it means to be in a position of power. The next day, Carol and Kuda, armed with .14 caliber rifles, returned to the beach more cautiously and spotted a sea creature. Upon approaching, but finding no tusks, one person stayed behind while the other went back to call for reinforcements. Set the boat out. Looking down from the boat, you could clearly see the tusks and the intact head submerged in the water. They tied ropes around the walrus and used a chainsaw to cut off its head, which contained tusks worth a fortune. However, only the local people are allowed to collect seals, walruses, and whales, so they must go through all the necessary registration after the contract is signed. In the Nanana River region, Jesse had just bought a vast plot of land, but didn't have any wood to build a house. He paddled his boat along the shore, selecting large trees, felling them using the correct technique in just a moment, then stripping the size of the house to be bone. Alaskan summers are short, so he had to hurry and gather enough wood. Once you get the hang of it, you just need to make a cut, insert the shovel, and peel off the entire bark from end to end. The smooth, polished tree trunk, placed on a few pieces of wood to make rollers, could be pulled along by himself even if it weighed a ton. There is no machinery to assist. These are all the prices he's willing to pay to live the way he chooses in the wilderness. Before embarking on any musical project, Jesse always plans for a fallback plan and how to resolve any issues. After felling the trees, he temporarily stacked all the timber along the riverbank, waiting to transport it back in one go by boat when needed. Because building a decent wooden house requires 150 to 200 round tree trunks of uniform diameter, 30 centimeters. Anything that's available in stores is readily available on Jesse's land, and she even has control over its quality. The only catch is that everything from chopping, cutting, and peeling to transporting has to be done by hand. Summer in Alaska is short, so he usually has to prepare a year in advance. Although I'm tired, thinking that this will be my future home gives me renewed strength. Of course, not every tree will fall exactly as intended. There was a tree that had fallen but was then stuck between 3 other trunks. The warped body indicated that if it were to spring open, it could bounce back dangerously, so Jesse had to figure out how to handle it. You also need to keep yourself safe. Ultimately, he chose to cut from the opposite direction of the trunk that bore the most force. But unexpectedly, the tree branch got stuck somewhere else, causing him to blurt out a curse. With a chainsaw in hand, took just a few more cuts and a powerful kick, and the job's done. Next, peel off the bark. Taking advantage of the long summer days with 24 hours of sunshine, you can work for more than 10 hours straight if you have the energy. Eventually, he felled over a dozen trees, stripped off all the bark, and dragged them ashore to transport by boat later in the summer. In winter, they pull it using a snowmobile. This work will continue for several more weeks. A few days later, Jessie decided to build a jetty in front of her house for easier loading and unloading. The wood is already there. It's just a little too long and needs to be trimmed. Working on the water is completely different from working on land. The wood swayed as if cutting through cotton. Before he could even get used to it, he was standing on 2 floating logs and fell with a splash into the water. What was supposed to be a simple job of cutting and then letting the saw rest in the water turned into a situation where the saw got stuck in water. Get the spare parts. We had to rush back home. Since it's already wet, just finish it underwater. 3 logs longer than music, 4M serve as the main beam. Secure it with long screws. That's the typical case of never learning your lesson. He dropped the drill into the river again the next time. Reaching the bottom with bare hands and having to use both feet to grip it means it's definitely ruined. Jessie then brought out some large metal containers to use as floats. Each barrel can withstand several hundred kilograms of pressure exerted on the wooden trunk at both ends. Luckily, the remaining drill could be used again after drying for a few hours. To build a wooden frame, he would lay planks and nail them together to secure the structure on both sides of the river. Therefore, Diana had nothing that he lacked. After just a few hours of hard work, a complete pier was built. From now on, getting on and off boats or moving light items will be effortless. A man can load his gun, pull the trigger, and instantly bring down a reindeer. Trade a few bullets for a whole winter of plenty. If you're short on money, go into the forest. A complete mink skin is worth 200 items. If you want to eat fresh fish, there's squirrel, salmon, and red-flesh fish. At Haslia, Rick is taking the children back to the woods. While learning modern knowledge, we must not forget the Athabasque culture of our ancestors. The boat traveled for over an hour before reaching the shore. Rick was holding a stick for self-defense and on high alert because the brown bears kept visiting the camp every few weeks, which must never let our guard down. On the first day, the father and his 2 sons only had time to settle into their accommodation. Rick took the 2 children to a swampy area. The water surface has just frozen solid enough. To support the weight, he placed 2 logs across the stream and carried them to a large fish trap. They placed branches underneath to prevent it from sinking. Once you've set the trap, just wait for the fish to pass by. They'll definitely swim in. I'll come back to pick it up later. However, while they were working, the daughter accidentally stepped on a bucket of ice with wet shoes, forcing the whole group change into dry clothes. Along the way, I also saw a red fox standing by the lake. If this thing appears, there's bound to be prey nearby. After changing clothes, the whole family drove back to the forest. The 2 children were excited to hunt grouse. This time I brought a short gun with a .222 caliber. After walking for a while, Sally spotted the first one under a tree. Rick stood beside his son, adjusting his hand. Just squeeze it and you'll hit the mark. The father and son rushed forward to pick it up. The chicken still had its wings attached and looked Rick smiled broadly and showered them with praise, clearly seeing that the kids were starting to love this life. As they were carrying their loot to the car, they encountered another animal blocking their way. Rick gave the .222 caliber pistol to his daughter, but she missed. The chicken leisurely walked into the forest. The whole family followed behind. Going deeper inside, we saw it calmly pecking and eating. With that kind of vigilance, it would be surprising if he didn't get ripped off. Rick switched to giving the gun to his daughter. This time, 1 shot and he'll be dead. Sally picked up the loot, the words she had been crying about earlier probably echoing in her head. It smells so good now. It's done. They went back to check the fish cages. In a few days, when the stream freezes completely, whether we'll have any fish to eat will depend entirely on this cage. When we pulled it up, we found 4 or 5 pike inside. But in Alaska, fish of this size are only considered fry, so Rick released them all. It's also important to teach children to respect nature because, for the Athabasque people, eating a fish is also a form of consumption. This land. If there are no big fish, 2 grouse will make up for it. Skewered meat, music, heart, and gizzard. Nothing is left out, and the whole family gathered to enjoy it. For Rick, passing on survival skills to his children is perhaps the very meaning of living. A few days later, he loaded his things onto the snowmobile, and when winter came, the kids sided with the banks. He set off to trap animals to earn money, starting his engine and speeding through the snow towards the forest. Because of the intense cold, the cold air rushed down into the valley, causing both the ferret and marten to run to higher ground to escape the cold. That's the perfect spot to set the trap. The only difference is that it looks close, but the 10-kilometer straight, music, route actually involves a winding 20 kilometers in reality. To prepare for the winter trapping season, Rick deliberately returned to the area during the summer to survey the route beforehand. After trudging for over 2 hours to reach the middle of the mountain, the slope began to become steep, making it difficult for the snowmobile. Wanting to admire the beautiful scenery, he completely disassembled his heavy sled and rode it uphill by himself. From above, the view can only be summed up in 2 words, breathtaking. After admiring it to my heart's content, I remembered I still had important business to attend to. He discovered fresh marten footprints. He tied bait to the end of the bait box and secured it to a tree branch. During this season, when mink fur is at its thickest and most luxurious, it also another animal trap right at the box door. Whenever an adorable little one sneaks in to sneak a bite, they're straight into the music, crispy chicken combo. Despite the long journey, Rick wasn't in a hurry. He built a fire and waited for a few hours. Memories from when he was 13 years old flooded back, recalling how his older brother had been seriously injured in a wooden house a few kilometers away. Traditionally, he burned some food as a sign of respect. As darkness fell, Rick set off for home, taking the opportunity to check the traps. One unit was already in stock. A brown ferret nestled inside further reinforced his belief in the effectiveness of this trap. Back in the cabin, Rick immediately dealt with his prey. The incision is made from the hind leg because the value of the hide lies in its intactness. These don't sell for much on the market, around $200 to $300, but for hunters in the wilderness, enough to live on. Meanwhile, in the river basin, Andy was waiting for Dennis to pick up the goods when he spotted a pack of lynxes. Deer antlers along the riverbank. He waved his hand for the boat to come closer. The M24 rifle was ready, but the whole group ducked into the bushes. How could I let go of such a tempting opportunity? The items can be picked up later, but if you miss out on the hunt, you don't know how long you'll have to wait. And steers the boat in an even-numbered direction ahead of the moving vessel. Reindeer used to be very rare to see here. This scale clearly indicates a change in their migration route. Further along, we saw tracks leading up and down the slope, a herd of about 20 birds. They both returned to the boat and sped toward a narrow gorge where the reindeer were sure to pass. Half an hour later, they lined up to wade across the river, and Andy steered the boat downstream. The moment the flock came ashore, they locked onto their target and squeezed the grass. But the hunt wasn't over because one wasn't enough for the winter. Two were necessary. Easy to breathe. It's estimated that it can process over 200 kilograms of meat without any waste. The internal organs were used for sled dogs, and the rest was used as bait. The two men struggled to get the prey onto the boat and return. On the riverbank, they built a campfire to barbecue meat amidst the white snow, enjoying the scenery while savoring reindeer meat. In the morning, the river was still flowing, but now ice is floating on the surface, signaling that winter is truly minutes later approaching. The aroma spread, and inspired a piece to taste. It was soft, sweet, and juicy. An experience like this is something you'll remember for a lifetime, even overnight. If you only do it once. The banks of the river were covered in snow, but Andy's three-story wooden house, built a few years ago, remained untouched. Lower floors. Today, he decided to renovate the third floor into a storage area for discarded items. Going up and down the stairs always involves carrying heavy things, so AI decided to go big and install a proper lift. The elevator will help prevent back injuries. Once the measurements are taken, we begin cutting the material. The stair treads are made of 2 layers of wood sandwiched between 4 layers of foam, making them both sturdy and effective at blocking cold drafts from 4 square steel bars to the floor and weld them together to form a frame. The frame is too tall, so the only way is to pull it out through the side window. The whole thing weighs about 50 kilograms, with the head being light and the tail heavy. Even after pulling it up, Dennis couldn't manage to drag it inside the house. Andy had to climb upstairs to install another pulley system, and then switch to using foot pedals to save energy. This way, Dennis was able to hang the frame as well. The tighter the rope was pulled, the ladder frame slowly slid through the window, but even with Andy's frantic warnings, they couldn't pull it in. It's only a little short, but no matter how hard I pull the rope, it can't catch up with gravity. It was only successful on the second attempt. This step alone completes half the project. The next day we'll continue welding the engine mounts. Looking back, I realized that if I had known I could weld right upstairs, it would have saved me all the trouble of carrying it around. After welding and connecting the steel cables, everything seemed fine. But when I pressed the control button, the floor was stuck, the elevator wouldn't go down. And cut a hole in it. Each side widened by about 1 centimeter. With Dennis standing up to act as a counterweight, the ladder finally began to descend slowly. The elevator platform was a bit too large, so he used a grinder to adjust it around the edges. Compared to other survival hunters, Anne's camp was truly luxurious. There are more than a dozen projects, both large and small. Once adjusted, test raising and lowering the chair as smoothly as if it were greased. 300 pounds without any problem. Meanwhile, in Kiwi and the camp, Mrs. Sue's 2 yellow oil tanks were used for heating during the winter. It's empty. Hearing clearly that a snowstorm was coming, she prepared early music, started the engine of the fuel truck, and went out. The oil again. Luckily, she worked as a middleman in the oil trade. Otherwise, winter would have been a disaster. Fill the bucket, and then take the rest back to the tank behind the camp. Each tank holds approximately 200 liters. On a good day, once a month is enough. And if you encounter a snowstorm, you need 2 tanks to feel safe. Around the Arctic, the weather is king, so if you're not well prepared, you're doomed. Filling your front and backyards with water is a recipe problem solved next month. The next day, Quebec had a rare sunny day, and Mrs. Sue took the opportunity to replace the old chimney because it was exposed to rain and wind every day. Twice a year. Hesitation could lead to freezing to death. There were years when the snowstorms brought down snow up to 2.5 meters deep. It has become even more extreme, reaching nearly 7 meters. The snow had risen higher than the campsite. If the chimney had broken down at that time, all we could do was stand and remove the wire with the retaining joint and give it a gentle shake. The tube will fall down. Wasn't difficult, but the hose was long, so carrying it around by myself and tightened the belt, then secured it further with screws. When winter comes, she has to deal with all sorts of chores. Each detail may seem insignificant, but when combined, a single mistake can cost a life. Mrs. Sue went inside and lit the fireplace. All this is just so that when the storm comes, there will still be some warmth left. 2 days later, the weather was sunny and cloudless again. Mrs. Sue placed 2 targets 100 meters apart to aim at, and the first bullet hit right in the middle. In the autumn, she managed to hunt a hoofed animal, but before she could hunt a second one, the herd had migrated and disappeared. This species in the Central Highlands is truly elusive. You see it one moment, and then it's gone in the blink of an eye. What kind of figure? Recently, Mrs. Sue discovered reindeer tracks again, and her diligent shooting practice is in preparation for hunting. After hitting the target with the 3rd shot and finding the right aiming point, you can set off to find your prey. Off-road drivers are only allowed to hunt males in the plains, so make sure the area is clear before shooting. There is a sphere. After walking a short distance, they spotted a herd of reindeer. Before she could get a clear look, Miss Sue stopped to confirm the target. In the litter, there are 2 or 3 birds that meet the musical standard, but they are extremely sensitive. Even the slightest disturbance can trigger. The driver approached slowly, but before they were within firing range, the pack fled. It's probably the noise from the car. She had no choice but to continue searching. Not long after, a stray was discovered, sadly without antlers. Even if the animal has shed its antlers, it can still be hunted. But upon closer inspection, it was a female animal, so shooting was not an option. She lost interest too. If they don't turn back in time, the reindeer herd could become prey for the wolves. Even though it's regrettable, we're not allowed to interfere. It wasn't until sunset that we saw any more reindeer tracks. At a distance of about 600 meters, the impact point was low, so no danger was detected at that time. She didn't miss such a good opportunity. He grabbed his gun, advanced, and jumped into the river to hide. A few minutes later, when they were about 100 meters away, the prey was still eating grass with its head down. She immediately raised her gun, chose the biggest animal, and pulled the trigger. The animal fell to the ground on the spot. As darkness approached, she quickly disposed of the body. Thank you, animal, for your sacrifice. Bears are hibernating this season, so there's nothing to worry about. Just be wary of wolves and hyenas. As night fell, she sped up dividing the meat, keeping only the main cut. After discarding the internal organs in the wild, there are 2 reindeer in reserve. There's no need to worry about a meat shortage this winter. In the Bushcraft area, Jesse prepared 2 guns. Some gold and a small caliber gun. 22. Along with sleeping bags and tents in case you get stuck in a snowstorm. He lived in the Nana River Basin during the summer. In winter, they traveled to Bushcraft, 120 kilometers away, to train their sled dogs. Because the terrain here resembles the Editero racetrack. It's hard to believe that just 10 years ago he was a hired coach, and now he owns 2 plots of land and several wooden houses. Yesterday there was heavy snow in this area, the road surface is soft, and the dogs pulling the sled are having a very hard time. Today he plans to open a 90-kilometer training route. Tie the tires on the back of the snowmobile to compress the road surface, and once everything is ready, set off. He spent half his life working with sled dogs, all because he wanted to win the 1,600-meter race. KM Editero. Not far from the camp, we encountered a mother deer and her fawn. Since the children were usually aggressive, Jesse stood still and waited for them to leave before continuing. Dark clouds gathered rapidly in the sky. A snowstorm was imminent, and soon the weather changed as quickly as a 20 kilometers from the destination. Once you encounter it, you can only persevere. Consider it a practice test, because snowstorms are a common occurrence in the actual competition. After running another 10 kilometers, we saw a grouse land. It's true that the protein source is self-sustaining. Removing the G triggers hunting mode. Unfortunately, the first attempt missed, but the chicken didn't fly far before landing again. He saw the whole group of music, hiding under the dog tree. Jesse excitedly moved closer, waiting for the right moment to pull the trigger. A second later, a musical victim collapsed. He quickly reloaded his weapon, preparing to continue. In winter, finding fresh meat is as rare as gold, so whenever there's an opportunity, you have to seize it and hunt to fill our stomachs. This time, although the attack was decisive, they were still careful to empty the magazine completely before advancing to claim the victory. 2 aren't enough to fill your teeth, 3 are hard to divide, but 4 or 5 would be just right. They loaded everything onto the back of the snowmobile and continued on their way. The snowstorm showed no signs of letting up. The higher we went, the calmer the wind and snow became, but the snow was still nearly a meter deep into the mud, causing the carriage to move sluggishly like an ox. With only a kilometer or 2 left to go, Jesse decided to remove the rear wheel, essentially discarding it. I'll get the weights when I get back. With the load lightened, the car sped up even though the snow wasn't yet compact enough. After crawling and struggling through the snow, once the roads are clear, finally arrived at our destination. Training the sled dogs for the winter. Many people don't understand what it feels like to spend your whole life chasing a championship. But for Jessie, that was the biggest goal of the rest of her life. At the Nuvik camp, they were tearing up dried animal tendons and crushing them into small strands to use as sewing thread. The shirt was made in the style of the indigenous people. This type expands when wet and tightens into an extremely durable material when dry. This year, the Hellstone family welcomed 2 more babies. One is the son of the eldest son of the family, and the other is the daughter of the youngest daughter, Mary. Traditionally, clothes had to be sewn for newborn babies. Those piles of black hides are actually black bear skins, precisely cut to fit each individual pattern is drawn. It is cut and sewn entirely by hand. The needle and thread were sometimes long, sometimes short, so after sewing a section, the shirts are tiny, I had to thread it again. Yet it takes 3 people a whole day, or even several days, to finish. Only a well-fitting jacket will provide the full warmth it deserves. While Nis and her 2 daughters were busy sewing, Chip and her son-in-law were also not idle. They are making wooden cradles for the children because the Arctic is covered in permafrost, so it's freezing cold even for adults. It's freezing cold, especially for children. The process is simple. Join the wooden planks together using mortise. The 2 children were in 2 frames covered with tarpaulin and pinned along the frame. For corners with screw-on hooks. By the time the hanging cradle was finished, the leather jacket inside the house was also completed. I tried it on and it fit perfectly and was warm. Just absolutely flawless. Chip brought in the cradle and hung it from the rafters with a rope. Tie it securely in all 4 directions so the children can lie comfortably as night fell, leaving only a few hours of daylight, making hunting inconvenient. Chip and his wife switched catching fish. They went to the riverbank, chipped away at the ice, music, cut the salmon into thin slices, hooked them onto hooks and dropped them in because cod is available this during winter. The sun never rises above the mountain peaks, so everything happens in darkness. Chip drills holes and sets traps. The confluence of the lake and the river is a prime location because it's a popular spot for all kinds of fish. After a busy hour, they finished setting 8 ice rink holes. Hopefully, when I return to check, I'll have some spoils for a meal during this long, drawn-out winter. A few hours later, Chip and Ednis returned. A temperature of -10 degrees Celsius caused the ice surface to thicken by several centimeters. They used it all to re-drill the fishing hole. Unfortunately, the first 2 hooks yielded nothing, so I put the bait down and continued checking. The next hole finally yielded results, pulling up a live cod that was wriggling around, seemingly. They only recently took the bait. Just then, Edit, the second son, arrived with his grandson. Music. The boy heard there were fish and was eager to experience the joy of fishing, but he was walking. Then they stepped right into the edge of an ice hole. Luckily, it was only 15 centimeters wide, so there were no serious injuries, and Music was quickly taken back to change clothes. Persevered, continuing to fish, and soon after, another fish bit the line. Agnes pulls up, a local species of catfish, Music, is quite rare this season. Just when we were enjoying ourselves, our eldest son and our fourth son arrived. The fishing group grew to 4 people. After a few hours without any more animals, and with darkness approaching, they decided to stop and drive their snowmobiles back home. The hunter lay in ambush on the snow, aiming his rifle at the reindeer, and with one shot, hit it right in the back. The large prey provided enough food to last through the winter, earning extra money. Music. People also set traps to catch weasels. We enjoy hot springs, eat delicious grass meat, and if we want something different, we go to the ice lake to fish for catfish. It felt just like a vacation. In the River Basin, a snowstorm struck, destroying Annie's camp. Hearing a loud noise outside, he went to check and saw that the wind turbine tower had been blown down by the wind. Not only was the pole crushed the vegetable watering tub. Looking back, the solar panel was also shaking violently. If we don't get out of here soon, we could be blown away at any moment. The urgent task is to secure the battery holder, and went into the warehouse and cut a thick iron ring with a flashlight. After some manipulation, a loop was created to attach it to the battery terminal. In addition, he welded back together all the loose parts. After reinforcement, the system is robust enough to last through the winter. The next day the storm subsided, and the weather was warmer. Andy and Dennis set about fixing the fallen wind turbine. If the water tank is broken, just cut it up and discard it. This tank cost over $1,000 to buy and ship. Luckily, it prevented the generator from being damaged. The bent support beams were straightened, and the main pillar is approximately 25 meters high. It looked short, but it's actually very tall. He used an additional 10-meter iron pipe connected at a right angle as a lever. Erect the large column using the principle of the cis lever. It's true that if you study physics and chemistry well, you won't be afraid to go anywhere in the world. This time it's just a test run, so the propeller isn't attached yet. When the short pipe is close to the ground, the large pillar is standing upright. But before they could rejoice, the securing cable snapped. Both the tower and the machine fell to the ground, further damaging the already broken frame. However, they didn't give up because this was their main source of electricity during the winter, and replaced the wires, reattached the propeller, checked that it was rotating smoothly, and then performed the final step, using the trunk completely. This time everything went smoothly without any problems. That explains why many people living in the wilderness don't use wind power. Not everyone has the skills that it possesses. When the risks outweigh the rewards, it's not worth the risk. Having finished, he began preparing food for the dogs. 15 adults and 4 cubs. The dogs eat so much food each day that we need a shopping cart to finish it all. The usual portion consisted of just a spoonful of dog food mixed with a tablespoon of diluted vegetable broth to save off hunger. In previous years, Andy made a comfortable living by fishing to support his entire team of sled dogs. But ever since the state government banned the use of automatic fishing machines, the dogs' meals have been dwindling. Luckily, there's still another source of protein available during this season. Andy brought animal traps intending to catch rats, sell the music, and feed the meat to the dogs. That would be considered a way to make a living. He set off from the Daha River, crossing the Alaskan wilderness. Standing on a dog sled, they sped towards the lake 2 kilometers away. In the wilderness, you never know whether surprise or disaster will come first. Before we even arrived, we could already see the reindeer footprints clearly imprinted in the snow. It was probably left here this morning. Andy immediately drew his gun, preparing to hunt, because if he could catch a few muskrats, it would save him from having to deal with the whole ordeal. This species is nicknamed the Ghost. What was visible in the morning had vanished by evening. Using his old binoculars, he scanned every corner of the forest, and a group of about 5 to 8 birds, with 2 leading them, walked proudly as if in a theatrical performance. Little did they know they had fallen straight into the hunter's line of fire. An explosion rang out, and the alpha male fell to the ground. Andy turned the gun barrel to the other one, and the same music happened. 2 shots, 2 kills, neat and tidy. The remaining offspring calmly left, as if nothing had happened. These 2 males weigh around 300 to 350 pounds, making them worth more than 100 muskrats. There's fresh meat for humans to eat, and offal and bones music to fill the dog's stomachs. When they pulled it back, they discovered the antlers were too big to fit on the sled, so they had to use a knife to separate the ends. Tilt the sleigh and stuff each heavy reindeer. __. These 2 solved almost 90% of the problem. Family's winter needs. Everyone was overjoyed to bring the spoils back to the camp. Upon returning home, Dennis gathered the bones, fat, and offal and put them into an iron pot to cook a large batch. Nearly 200 pounds of lean meat were harvested and set aside for consumption. The rest is left for the dog to eat, in the typical style of the owner eating dog meat. There were also large ribs up the soup, making for the dog's most sumptuous meal since their fish supply was cut off. There are still many hunters like Andy in Alaska. Without fishing, they were forced to rely on reindeer and large animals for survival. Ahead lies a harsh period, but to survive in this wilderness, there is only one way. Gritting their teeth, they moved forward and crossed into the Haslia area. Rick led his son out of the log cabin after taking care of Helly, and then went to check the traps around the area. These steel traps, shaped like beer mugs, not only catch beavers, but also lure wolves and foxes of all kinds. Rick wasn't a professional hunter, but whenever trapping season allowed, he'd earn a little money from hunting animals. Help out the family. He removed the safety catch from the trap, put it in a plastic container, and carefully camouflaged it with wooden sticks. If any greedy creature manages to sneak in, it's as good as encountering the black and white. If this thing gets stuck on the wrong person, even a minor injury when the weather is very heavy, pain, bones break like crazy. After giving instructions on technique and safety precautions, Rick carefully opened the spike trap and placed it down correctly, the waiting position for prey to fall into the trap. Back in the day, when I was Skylar's age, Rick was also once trapped in a musical trap. I still remember that excruciating pain vividly to this day. He prepared a large trap and then took some smaller ones, specifically for weasels and other furry creatures. Value. The opening method is the same. He prepared in advance so that going into the forest wouldn't waste time. Rick and his son went up into the highlands. The first snow of winter is still soft, so the car sways precariously as it rolls along. A single misstep could easily lead to an overturn. The father and son arrived at the designated area, began setting traps, and cut down a small pine tree to make a path. Set traps at the entrance, arrange other traps similarly. Whether the music catches anything or not depends on luck. The next morning, they got up early to check, and upon arrival they found a weasel. Music caught in a trap. It could be a reward for them cleaning the beaver nest earlier. Thanks to Alaska's frigid climate, the furs produced there are of superior quality. A mink skin can sell for 200 items. Rick and his son's hats are also made from this material. They removed the animal from the trap, put it back in its original position, and then continued checking the remaining traps. The large trap set to catch the snow hyena was empty, but there was a trophy in the trap box next to it. A pure white snow ferret of the musical species was once favored by European ladies, and its price was high better than mink skin. Now it's only $5 to $10. Seeing its frozen body, Rick carefully packed up the trap to take home and replaced the box with a new one. Back at the camp, Rick taught his son how to undress. Essential skills for a hunter include using a knife to cut from the hoof, hanging the animal upside down on the floor, and grasping it. Pull the fur aside and pull hard to separate the entire piece of skin. Indigenous people in the Arctic region utilize animal hides to keep warm during the cold season. For the small ferret, he even made a custom-fitted drying board, securing it from end to dry. It is a finished product. The next day, the temperature dropped to minus 30 degrees Celsius, unsuitable for going outside, so Rick took his child to bathe in something they hadn't had a chance to try since arriving. Beneath a floor still covered in mud and sand, the bathhouse consists of two parts, a sauna room and a shower room. After cleaning up the sauna room, the father and son went outside to hunt for some food. On the snowy road, they encountered a flock of grouse. Rick handed the gun to his son, but the first shot missed slightly, so the two of them chased after the target on their snowmobiles. One of them fell after the first shot. They picked up the prey. Because the trip was short and the wind was about to blow, I decided to go back at the camp. Rick cleaned the fur, removed the internal organs, put the meat in a plastic bag, and then dropped the bag into the stream. For cooking. If the stream is good for cooking eggs, then it's good for cooking chicken. While waiting, the two continued cleaning the mud in the bathroom, cleaning the water inlet and outlet pipes, and scooping out the mud 20 centimeters thick until a smooth cut is visible. The water flows through, washing away the dirt. It just needs to settle a little more before Rick went back to the stream, retrieved a chicken, and gave each of them a large, cooked leg, its meat incredibly fragrant with the flavor of the hot spring. After eating their fill, they immersed themselves in hot water, the warmth spreading throughout their bodies. Refreshing sensation of both fire and ice. Havoc, Ms. Sue carried a backpack with a teddy bear and a swung rifle. The creatures, driving through the bushes, were clearly on a hunting trip. Right now, only partridges are active around here. The wind is still tolerable, but if it gets stronger, we must return immediately. To avoid getting lost in the wilderness, grouse usually eat young willow shoots. In strong winds, they don't fly but hide in the bushes to escape the cold. These places were the first targets that Ms. Sue inspected. Snow covered everything. No matter how hard you looked, you couldn't find a single chicken feather. On the contrary, there was one. The gray wolf ambled past in front of us. She looks quite similar to me. I saw her earlier this winter. It's a shame what she needs right now is protein, not protein. It must have fur. Furthermore, the wolf showed no signs of aggression, so if there were no traces of the grouse, it should have turned back. But it's never easy to give up. She drove her small red car further away from the camp in search of new food sources, because eating venison all winter was also getting boring. I'm fed up. Following the thicket, the grouse in the snow were suddenly startled and flew up into the air. Against the white backdrop, they were almost invisible, but their positions were instantly revealed when they took off at the same time. Miss Sue quietly got out of the car, tiptoeing cautiously, afraid of further startling her prey, and seized the opportunity to strike decisively. Took down one. Picking up the spoils of war, the white fur mixed with blood was almost invisible, standing right next to it without moving. It was difficult to detect. Back at the farm, she handled the partridge very neatly, keeping the heart, gizzard, and liver. Nothing was wasted. Just as I finished my work and looked up, I saw the gray wolf that looked like it was eating something. This was the third time she had encountered it, so she didn't dare to be careless. Miss Sue brought out several motion-sensing cameras and placed them around the camp, using the carcasses of partridges as bait. One was left under the bushes, another was tied to a wooden music stand. In case the whole pack of wolves appeared, there would be time to react. The next day, I returned to find blood on the snow and the carcass of my prey. The area is covered in wolf footprints, indicating a high level of activity. When they brought the camera back to review the footage, they were asked to select the image of a large female wolf that had been separated from to hunt it, but she also had to prevent it from coming near, so she decided to make a repellent chase. She mixed coffee powder with boiling water, then added an acidic substance, stirred it well, and let it cool. Mix the flour with vinegar, aiming for the sourer the better. Just the smell alone is enough to make people want to stay away. After filtering the coffee, mix it with the powder mixture. The smell of coffee is enough to make brown bears wary. Music. No animal would like this added sour, rotten taste. Ms. Sue dismantled homemade biological and chemical weapons scattered around the camp as a way to mark territory and reinforce a sense of national identity. So it understands the message. Just then, a lynx ran up to see what was happening, but as soon as it smelled something, it darted away and disappeared. The riverside area where wolves are most active is being de-escalated to a double sliver as the 24-hour darkness approaches. Not wanting any predators lurking around Coverick Camp, music cuts to checking. Is Skylar a worthy son-in-law? Today's hunting mission is being undertaken by him and Chip. Having packed their things, they both set off. In winter, their main food source is the migrating reindeer. The meat satisfies their hunger, while the rest is a precious resource. The two parked their car on a high hillside because experienced hunters always occupy high vantage points for observation. Conveniently, I enjoyed a hot cup of coffee to warm myself up, but unfortunately, after scanning around, with only 3 hours left, any of them during the day, we were forced to move to a different side of the mountain. Just as they were crossing the thicket, Chip's snowmobile got stuck in the mud. It's true that the more urgent the situation, the more problems arise since he'd been on this stretch, so the terrain had completely changed. The further he sped up, the deeper the car sank into the mud. They had to rely on Skylar to help pull them out. Chip looked at his future son-in-law with a completely different gaze, gaining a few more points of trust, and then the two continued walking. The next mountain. Upon arrival, they spotted the reindeer herd they had been searching for. A small group stood on the distant mountainside. At this time, reindeer were in mating season, and their meat smelled very bad, so Chip and the Hellstone family always choose to hunt female reindeer at midday when they are breeding. The sun had just passed over the mountain range. To increase their chances of hunting, the two decided to split up and act separately. Not long after, Chip was the first to detect the movement. A few consecutive shots brought all 3 animals down on the spot. He fired 8 shots from a distance of about 100 meters, which is quite a high efficiency rate. At that very moment, Skylar also arrived on his snowmobile. It turned out he had also caught 2 of them, but he didn't have a vehicle to tow them away. The 2 men gathered the 3 chip-shooting Pokemon together in one spot, then sent Skylar back to get the trailer to transport the remaining 2, while Chip stayed behind to process the meat. Not long after, Skylar returned with 2 larger, fully grown reindeer, Music. 5 in total were enough to feed the whole family throughout the entire nighttime season. It was late at night, and they had to hurry to bring their spoils back. Chip is growing fond of her future son-in-law, a local man. Among hunters, a glance is enough to understand each other. Few words are needed. The 2 men pulled a cart full of reindeer back to the camp. Ednis was incredibly excited by the sight. Never before had they hunted 5 animals in just 3 hours. Chip recounted the hunting process and didn't forget to praise Skylar's abilities. As night fell, they began butchering the meat. Chip and Skylar peeled it off. Ednis used an ulu knife to cut the meat into portions. Even though the temperature was -3 degrees, it comes with cold wind, but if it freezes solid, it will be more difficult to handle. The thigh meat, as soon as it was separated, was covered in white bone. However, this process also carries risks. Even a slight mistake in cutting into an internal organ can cause a strong, foul odor to standing nearby, shook her head. These 5 reindeer not only brought back several hundred kilograms of premium lean meat, but also 5 slabs of skin, enough to make a whole car, while the cost was only a few dozen liters of gasoline and 3 hours of labor from 2 people. Looking at the rack full of meat, you might think there's a lot, but in reality, it's only enough to last 1 or 2 months. As long as the reindeer continue to migrate through this area, the Hellstone family will have nothing to worry about. Winter food. The following day, a major snowstorm swept through Kavik, and the temperature dropped steadily. Previously, they were so busy hunting for the word music that they hadn't had time to accumulate the word for firewood. They are now forced to go out and haul wood back to light a fire for warmth. They drove their snowmobiles along the riverbed, moving forward. In the summer, they had gathered some wood and placed it along both sides of the window. Now all you have to do is cut them to the appropriate length and return them, and you're done. This storm will last for several days, so they need to prepare enough firewood for over a week. Having finished loading this pile, they immediately moved on to the next location. The logs in wetlands like this are all carried downstream by the upstream water. Whenever they see one, they gather it in one place, placing about 4 to 5 pieces at each spot. The 2 men worked diligently in the stormy weather when, at that very moment, the machine suddenly broke down. As a last resort, we had no choice but to return to the camp and figure things out from there. Jesse pulled the sled, getting ready to go out, and went to the kennel to pick out a few dogs. Tow the cart. Today he plans to go to a desolate plateau. Compared to sleds, dog sleds are more reliable because they don't break down easily. He also wanted to experiment with a new way of arranging the dog team. Jesse makes a living from dog sled races. A completely new arrangement could yield different results. Once everything was ready, he drove the car with music, trip, and in addition to training the dogs, also included ice fishing. This is Jesse's second winter living in Vascana. There are still many bodies of water around here that he music has never stepped in. This destination happens to have a lake. Whenever he had free time in winter, he would go exploring the surrounding resources. An additional food source means an additional chance of survival. For the first dozen kilometers or so, the pack of dogs ran in a very orderly manner. Both speed and operating space have improved significantly. Just as Jesse was enjoying this arrangement, a dog accidentally got tangled in the main wire. He rushed forward to deal with the problem, but before he could even untangle the knot, the whole team started running off again. Jesse's 2 legs were ultimately no match for the 4 legs of the dogs. His only option was to sit in the car and use the foot brake until it came to a complete stop. This new arrangement has both clear advantages and disadvantages. If you want to use it to win the championship, it seems you'll have to. Long-term training and coordination. Having tidied herself up, Jessie continued on toward her goal. Those snow-capped mountain ranges in the distance are the Alaska Range, a place where there are neither trees nor shelters. If something goes wrong, all you can do is wait to die on the spot. The lake at his feet was his destination. Jesse chose an open space by the shore, arranged the dogs, and then used a drill to make holes. After drilling through, use a shovel to clear away the ice debris. The lake water was crystal clear, so he took out his fishing rod, hooked the bait, and entered his familiar ice fishing mode. A depth of about 2 to 3 meters is ideal for ice fishing. Jesse used to hang bait and drop it into the ice hole, then come back to check on it after a while. The current way of phrase sentences requires a great deal of concentration and patience. Time passed minute by minute, second by second, but after more than an hour, not a single fish was in sight. Jessie guessed she had probably chosen the wrong spot, so she moved closer to the center of the lake and drilled a different hole. As the sunset casts its light upon the snow-capped mountains, the scenery is so beautiful that people can gaze at it endlessly without getting tired. Unfortunately, after waiting for several hours, we still didn't see a single fish. Just when Jesse had lost all hope, a fish suddenly bit the bait. He excitedly reeled in the line immediately. Through the hole in the ice, the fish's tail was clearly visible underwater, and with one hand, he lifted the fish straight onto the shore. He initially thought he would go home empty-handed today, but unexpectedly caught such a big one. It seems Mother Nature is still kind to him, as night completely covers the plateau. Jesse found a spot to prop up the campfire. Fresh fish is cooked in a pot. He stood beside them, playing the harmonica, while the dogs were his loyal audience. Once the folk song was finished, the fish in the pot was cooked. He tore off a piece with his hand and tasted it. The taste is simply indescribable. Oh my god. So even if it takes a whole day just to catch one fish, as long as it's delicious enough, it's all worth it.